Greetings all! Today, we will be examining the relatively common water psychic type Pokemon Slowpoke, the Dopey Pokémon, its relatively rare primary evolution Slowbro, the Hermit Crab Pokémon, and its rare alternative evolution Slowking, the Royal Pokémon. Dim-witted to the extreme in most parts of their life, and definitely not a ready fit for the unusual powers they possess, the members of the Slowpoke family are bizarre mammals whose abnormal evolutionary lifestyle more than helps to set them apart from other aquatic creatures of their type. Slowpoke possess squat, almost hippo-like bodies with pink skin and fur covering their entire form, save for their beige-colored ribbed belly and a quartet of short legs with a single claw on each end. They have a long, flexible tail that constantly excretes a tasty fluid from its white tip, which often makes them the target of attack by Pokemon and humans alike. Their ears have a curled form to them, while their beige snout has a pair of thin nostrils and frames the large mouth and small canines, with pinprick blank eyes that often just stare off into the distance. Their primary evolution, Slowbro, retain an almost identical body form to Slowpoke, though they tend to walk upright on their hind legs most of the time, and have 2 claws on their hind legs and 3 claws on each of their hands. The only major difference is the presence of a mutated spiral shell shelter on their tail, which is a semi-permanent fixture on their forms and is responsible for the increase in power that comes with their evolution. In addition, the creatures can undergo Mega Evolution to become Mega Slowbro, in which state the shelter attached to them grows immensely in size and covers their entire bodies like a suit of armor, leaving only their hands, head, and tail exposed, as the shelter grows a nasty ring of teeth and longer spines and encapsulates the creature almost entirely. Their other evolution, Slowking, on the other hand, while also retaining a similar body form, have only a single claw on each limb like Slowpoke and have a shorter tail as a whole, walking upright in almost all circumstances. They now sport a frilled, red and white striped organic collar of flesh around their neck, used for mating displays, and the top of their head is covered by a mutated spiral shelter shell as before, though they face backwards compared to the actual host, and have a red gem on the front near the host's face that helps them to more readily focus their psychic powers. The members of the Slowpoke family are among the most abnormal of Pokemon known, as a result of the incredibly unique way in which they evolve and develop over time. Unlike the vast majority of other Pokemon, in all stages of evolution, these creatures are basically the same animal, a Slowpoke, with the only changes that occur to their form coming as a result of close interactions with shelter. These creatures are fairly unintelligent as a result of a nerve disorder and can't really do much, but the one thing they are good at is fishing. These beasts naturally excrete a sweet, tasty fluid from the tips of their crunchy tails that they use as a lure, and the taste of this sweet treat is adored by many aquatic Pokemon. The same goes for humans as well, as having their tails dried and then simmered in a salty stew is said to produce a delicious treat for people. Their tails are able to be broken off without really harming the creatures, as they can easily regenerate their tails in a few days if they are broken off, and thus helps them deal with the consequences of their fishing technique. When they are hungry, these beasts will go towards a body of water and stick their tails in over the edge, resting on the shore or edge of the body of water, and will simply wait. While the nerve disorder means that they can end up forgetting why they came to that spot in the first place, or may not notice that something has latched on, when they do get a bite and become aware of it, they will hoist their tail onto land and enjoy their meal gleefully. However, if these creatures manage to hook a shelter in some way, something quite magical happens. As it turns out, while shelter especially love the taste of this sweet but non-nutritious liquid, it actually contains a compound in it that makes it toxic to these creatures, so while they are extremely unwilling to let go, it causes them to mutate horribly into a spiral shell form, and will remain with their host Slowpoke at that point for the rest of their lives, effectively turning the duo into the Pokemon Slowbro. The same effect is achieved with a worn King's Rock, since they are made out of the crystallized tail fluid, and biting their head instead will lead to the creation of Slowking. Needless to say, in any form, these creatures can make a name for themselves due to their abnormal access to psychic power, something that is still not fully understood, and their dopey and carefree natures can grant them access to the oblivious and own tempo abilities as base abilities, while their ability to draw energy either from inside them through the psychic will or the shelter attached to them grants them access to the regenerator ability as a hidden ability. Furthermore, the highly armored shells of Mega Slowbro can help protect them immensely against critical strikes to their form, granting them access to the shell armor ability as their only ability. As far as their stats are concerned, in the case of both Slowbro and Slowking, These creatures are both known to not be the strongest of fighters from a physical standpoint and are extremely slow moving as a whole, either because they are simply unable to move fast or because they prefer to take their time, so their base attack and speed stats are below average for a fully evolved water and psychic type Pokemon. On the other hand though, their special offensive powers are not too bad and they have a lot of stamina to work with, so they are both noted as having above average base HP stats for a fully evolved Pokemon of both of their types, and an above average base special attack stat for a fully evolved water type Pokemon. Their defensive stats are where these evolutions part ways, however, as Slowbro possess strong physical defenses as a result of the shelter attached to them serving as a strong physical barrier, while Slowking are able to better resist special attacks in a similar way. As such, the base defense stat of Slowbro is above average for a fully evolved Pokemon of both of their types, while Slowking is likewise with their base special defense stat, the opposite stat being below average in both cases. As such, while they might not be as hard-hitting as other Pokemon like them, these creatures can take quite a beating and prove to be a daunting wall that only strong offenses will have much of a chance of breaking through. As previously mentioned, Slowpoke are not among the smartest of creatures as a result of a nerve disorder that renders the electrical impulses generated by their nerves to be quite weak and thus are delayed in their reception, so their bodies are very slow to respond to just about any type of mental or physical stimulus. In fact, even if they are attacked directly, these creatures will not register pain signals in their body until at least 5 seconds after they are initiated, and in some cases, this can be so bad that they are unable to feel anything for days at a time. This does give them an advantage in survival, as it can allow them to move on even with serious injuries, but their slow movement speeds also means that anything that chooses to prey on them will have an easy target regardless. As a defense against this issue, these creatures have developed an abnormal brain structure that allows them to wield psychic energy as a weapon, though oftentimes the use of this power is limited until sometime after birth. This power makes these otherwise benign creatures, who generally prefer to just loll about rather than do anything of importance, a slight threat, even if their physical strength is noticeably greater than their special strength prior to evolution, and could thus make them a bit trickier to deal with than one might think otherwise. The only good news for this is that their predators on land are almost non-existent, with those that live in the water being the only ones that pose a significant threat to them. There isn't much more that can be said about these unusual creatures, but it is important to note that, in some legends in parts of Japan, it is said that these creatures have the power to summon rainstorms when they yawn. This is tied to legend regarding them being able to end droughts by doing so, especially in places like Azalea Town of the Johto region where they are revered and taken care of regularly. And while this might seem a bit silly, they do have the capacity to learn the rain dance technique naturally, so the validity of these legends cannot be completely discounted. When a shelter latches onto the tail of a Slowpoke and mutates into the spiral shell form that is iconic for Slowbro, they end up giving their host a range of new abilities and powers that helps to make them a far more dangerous threat than a Slowpoke could ever be. For one thing, because of the incredibly heavy nature of the shell, the back ends of these creatures are constantly pulled towards the ground. In order to make motion possible again, this forces these beasts to usually walk upright on their hind legs, becoming almost completely bipedal in the process as they constantly space out and stare into the distance. As a result of this change in motion, while these creatures do not see much in the way of improvement towards their overall movement speeds, they do become able to learn certain moves like Brick Break through artificial means that Slowpoke could never get access to, seeing as evolution frees up their front set of legs. At the same time, the large shell allows these creatures to use it directly as a shield, allowing them to learn a variation of the withdraw technique immediately upon evolving from Slowpoke, plus it changes their EV yield from 1 in HP to 2 in defense. However, because their tail is now permanently occupied, these creatures can no longer fish and hunt for prey the way they used to, so they must begrudgingly swim through the water to hunt for fish and other prey items like traditional aquatic mammals. And while this does seem to annoy them a little bit, the boost in power that shelter provides more than makes up for this, and Slowpoke still often feed them their leftover food scraps in order to keep them healthy and functional. The mutated shelter also provides these creatures with a boost to their psychic powers thanks to a powerful toxin that is formed when the saliva of these creatures mixes with the blood of their Slowpoke host. This neurotoxin leaks into the bloodstream of these creatures when the shelter bites down, and while the toxin has the effect of numbing their bodies even further to the point of feeling almost no pain and spacing out for hours on end, it also helps them think more clearly by flushing their bloodstream and nerves, causing them to have moments of inspiration to help finish a thought or solve a problem when the shelter bites down hard as much as it can, to heavily increase the power of their special attacks, even if these moments end almost immediately after they begin. Sadly, as strongest evolution makes these creatures, it is not always permanent, as the shelter attached to them can be thrown off with sufficient violent force, resulting in them de-evolving and returning to their former state of evolution, reducing their powers in turn and forcing them to find another shelter if they wish to evolve again. It is further noted that Slowbro are one of the few Pokemon that are known to be capable of undergoing the process of Mega Evolution when they are in possession of a Slowbro Knight. In this form, instead of the energy from Mega Evolution going into the Slowpoke that acts as the host in Slowbro, all of the power is instead absorbed by the shelter attached to them, and this causes a massive surge of growth hormones to be produced that makes these creatures grow immensely for a short period of time, becoming so large in form that they completely absorb and encapsulate the host Slowpoke, effectively swallowing their form and covering them in a massive, heavily armored shell that is nigh impenetrable under normal circumstances. At this point, the shell is so large and encapsulates so much of its host that they cannot move around normally, though they seem to be quite comfortable inside. So to compensate, the joints and ligaments in their tails become highly firm but elastic, which allows them to use their tails as springs that they can hop up and down on. And while it may look ridiculous, it seems to do the job just fine for them. While the host ends up becoming the less dominant component of their pairing as a result of Mega Evolution, this does not come without its rewards, as this allows the shelter to inject massive volumes of their toxins into the host while protecting them with an armored form as strong as that of a cloister shell, resulting in a considerable increase to the base special attack stat and a monstrous increase to the base defense stat, tying with Cloister for the highest base defense stat out of all Water-type Pokemon and acquiring the highest base defense stat out of all Psychic-type Pokemon in general. As such, while they might look incredibly goofy, Mega Slowbro are devastating walls that can more than prove to be incredibly difficult to break through without the strongest of possible offenses on one side to work with. On the other hand, if these creatures are wearing a King's Rock and are either bitten on the head by a shelter or exposed to the energy used in some treating devices, it will cause the same mutation as before, but with radically different effects on the host's form. When these shelter bite down on the heads of Slowpoke when wearing a King's Rock, they will actually grow around the structure and form a crown of sorts on their heads, and in biting down, they bypass the blood-brain barrier and end up exposing the brains of these creatures to their generated neurotoxin directly. While this might seem like a bad thing, this actually has the effect of mitigating their nerve disorder and not only removing its effects, but effectively amplifying their brain function immensely, causing them to instead evolve into the Pokemon Slowking. In this state, the shelter does not feed off of scraps, instead being sustained purely by the immense psychic energy flowing through the body of their host, now unrestrained by their nerve disorder, and Slowking become capable of using their power to their fullest, amplifying their special powers and resistances and making them a special wall versus the physical wall Slowbro are, changing their EV yield from 1 in HP to 3 in special defense. While they can still walk upright, it is out of intelligence and dignity more than necessity, and the overall transformation renders them very calm and collected and increases their intellect to match that of award-winning scientists, earning them the nickname the Sage of the Sea. They become capable of thinking about the greatest mysteries and problems of the world thoughtfully, even in some cases being able to learn how to speak human languages to communicate with people and often matching wits against the likes of Pokemon like Oranguru, though the battle of intellect more often than not ends in ties. Though they can be as forgetful sometimes as their counterpart Slowbro, this intellect also has an effect on the moves these creatures learn. As well, they become unable to learn the Amnesia, Rain Dance, and Slack-Off techniques. They instead gain access to the Nasty Plot, Swagger, Power Gem, Hidden Power, and Trump Card moves. Plus, they can receive a temporary boost in their base intelligence with a fresh surge of toxins when their shelter bites down hard after they yawn, so their combat abilities definitely differ in ways that can make them a bit trickier to deal with. Unfortunately, as with their other evolution, this is not a permanent change, for if the shelter on their head is thrown off in any way, these creatures will revert back into a Slowpoke and lose all of the knowledge they had acquired during their evolved state, forcing their minds back into a highly regressed state and robbing the world of another brilliant mind in the process. Though they might seem more than a bit dopey in most of their evolutionary forms, the members of the Slowpoke family are intriguing beasts that can definitely use their abnormal powers to make themselves a viable threat if needed. You might have a hard choice to make in deciding which form to evolve them into, but either way, these beasts can be decent walls and prove to be harder to exhaust and take down than they might initially seem. Just do yourself a favor and, if you do come across some of these creatures, know what you're in for beforehand. You might have to worry about dealing with a dim-witted monster with serious fighting strength in one instance, but if you play your cards right, coming across the other form is a boon if you can set your differences aside and sit down to actually have an intelligent conversation with them on questions you may have. For when in doubt, ask Slowking. Thank you all for watching this video. It is always an honor to be able to speak with you all on the subject of Pokemon in a way that brings me great joy and happiness in my work. If you would like to keep tabs on past and future work, click that subscribe button, check out my work on DeviantArt, and don't be shy about following me on Twitter, where you can find pertinent announcements on upcoming work before it is officially posted. Links to both can be found in the video description. If you would like to support my work and help Miguel and I continue to produce more content for you and improve upon our presentation, please visit us at my Patreon page, which you can also find a link to in the video description.
Yeah, no.
With that, I thank you for watching and I wish you well.